So we are on the mode of asserting object possessors within the Sotantrika system. And in the Vaibhashika, we saw that the object possessors that can refer to the person and it can refer to the consciousnesses. So first, so there's where the Tanit schools define what is a person. The person is not the same as the self, right? Although we call ourselves the person, for us it's the same thing, but in Buddhism we keep that separated. And so normally we speak about the illustration of a person. It's like we give an example of a person. So within the Sautantrika, the example of a person is either the continuum of the aggregates, or it is the mental consciousness. Right? So we have the Sautantrika system. It is not that everyone agrees on everything, but to be someone from the Sautantrika, you hold certain tenets, and then there can be little variations. And some they tend more towards the Vaibhashika, and some they tend more towards the mind-only school, right? So within the Sautantrika, you can either be actually more from that group or you are moving towards that group. So we have an echo. Echo. Is it back? Thank you. So those who say that the continuity of the aggregates is an illustration of person, they are more tending towards the Abhidhamma Kosha. While the ones who are talking about the mental consciousness being the illustration of persons, they follow the 7 treatises on valid cognition from Dharmakirti and Dignaga. So they go a little bit more, they have moved away from the Vaibhashika school. And so then within the Sautantrika, we have all these definitions with respect to consciousness. So the first definition is the definition of mind itself. And when you study, whatever you study, there is a lot that comes back. What is the definition of mind? So you should know the definition of mind.
Clear and knowing.
Clear and knowing. So that which is clear and knowing. Clear referring to the fact that it is like space, right? You can't touch it, you can't access it with your sense consciousnesses or with your sense power, your sense perception. It is like space. You can't hold it, you can't grasp it, you can't see it. It is like space. That means clear. And then it is knowing, which means that in each and every consciousness, there is that ability to know its object. Right? It doesn't mean that we need to know with every consciousness, every object, but the capacity to know is there. It is a function of the mind. The function of the mind is that it knows. Right? So whatever is clear and knowing is the mind, the definition of mind. And so in general, there are 2 types of mind. There are minds that are valid. They're called valid cognizer. And then there are minds that are not valid, which are non-valid cognizers. And so then what the Sautantrika do is they define everything. So they define the valid cognizer. What is that? And so they say that is a new incontrovertible knower or a new incontrovertible cognizer. So when we think about the first moment that I see something or I think about something, that is a moment that I cognize something for the first time. It is new, and I know it in a way that it is incontrovertible. Right? That is the meaning of valid. I have come to a conclusion that it is like this. That's incontrovertible. Then I have, for instance, the next moment of consciousness, which is also incontrovertible, realizing the same object, but it's not new anymore. Right? So that is called a subsequent cognizer. And that is not seen or not defined as being a valid cognizer within the system. And so these valid cognizers, we can divide them into two. One is the valid direct perception, and one is the valid inferential cognizer. And so valid direct perceivers are those perceivers connected or these consciousnesses connected to the senses, the sense consciousnesses. They perceive in general, no, not in general. It is like that. All sense consciousnesses perceive their object directly without interference of a conception or anything else. There is a bare connection between the consciousness and the sense power and the object. Well, valid inferential cognizers, they are from mental consciousnesses. Mental consciousnesses, in order to get to a valid perception within the mind of ordinary beings, they first need to go to a process of reasoning. And then through that process, they come to a conclusion that they say it is like that. And the first time that you realize something, you have a new incontrovertible cognizer, which is a valid inferential cognizer. You realize the object through inference, through reasoning, right? The mental consciousness in ordinary beings, although there are direct mental perceivers, ordinary beings cannot use them, right? So they say what happens is when I observe something, for instance, I look at the chair, I see the chair with direct sensory, direct eye perception, I see the chair. And in the next moment, there is a mental direct perceiver observing the chair. And in the next moment, there is the conceptual consciousness perceiving the chair or thinking about the chair. So that one moment of mental direct perception, we don't catch that. It's like an inattentive awareness. The awareness is there, but we cannot see it. We're not aware of that one. Right? So we do have a mental direct perception, but in ordinary beings, that is an inattentive awareness. So therefore, it's not valid. We can't use that as a valid perception. And so then within that Tantrika system, when we go through it, you can see that they go into all the different types of perceivers that they are there, which I'm not going to go all that way there, because then we are studying Lorik, right? And we don't want to do that this weekend. We want to study tenets. But it's very good to know that within this system, there is all that information that we use to understand the workings of the mind. The mind, which is clear and knowing by nature. And we want to understand what kinds of minds are there, right? Because there is a coarse mind, and then there is a subtle mind. And then within Tantra, we even have an extremely subtle mind. So the coarse mind is connected to the senses. And so there is the sense perception. How does sense perception work? And then there is also a coarse mental perception. How does that work? And then there is a mental, more subtle perception. And when we develop that more subtle mind, we can have access to more subtle objects like impermanence. And so when we start to realize these things with a mental consciousness directly, we are actually developing something really special in the mind, which is the yogic direct perceiver. So eventually we want to develop that part of the mind. right? So we need to therefore know what kind of minds there are, and which kinds of minds are valid and which ones are not valid, and how they come about. Because if we look, what we really want to do is where we are at the moment, our consciousness with respect to reality is wrong. Wrong. So we have a wrong consciousness, which is, let me see if there is a 7th division of the consciousnesses. Is that somewhere? Maybe more down. So there are 7 types of awareness. Oh yeah, with the non-valid cognizers. So you have to go down a little bit. Down. Yeah, yes, the non-valid cognizers. So the last one is a mind to which an object appears, but is not ascertained. Oh no. Oh, this is really strange. I thought normally the 7th one, the last one, is the wrong consciousness. So we are in the wrong consciousness, right? We have a wrong understanding about the nature of reality. And then at a certain point, reality, no, they don't. It depends on which level you're talking. A reality might appear to us, but that reality is not ascertained. We're not aware of that. So then we listen to the teachings and we hear things about the nature of reality, and somehow some doubt starts to come in the mind. Maybe what I'm perceiving is not completely right. Maybe it is wrong, right? So in order to go from a wrong consciousness to a valid consciousness, we first need to doubt our wrong conclusion, right? Otherwise, we can't move away from it. If I believe I'm right, even when I'm wrong, I cannot change my mind. First, the doubt needs to come. And that doubt can be first like, I'm not sure what it is, and then I study more, and then the doubt becomes towards the fact that I think it actually might be true what they're saying, and so then you develop the mind more and more, and at a certain point you get a kind of a more feeling for it must be like this. So then we have a correct assumption. And then from that correct assumption, we develop the mind more, we learn more, we study more, we meditate more. And at a certain point, you can, maybe within that meditation, you can develop an inferential valid cognition. You make a proper conception that is in accordance with reality. That is not reality itself, but it is a correct representation of reality, right? So you see reality as it is, but still through a conception. You still don't have a direct conception, but that's very good. So you have that, then you meditate on that single-pointedly. At a certain point, the conception drops, and then you have a direct, valid cognition of reality. So when we study these minds, we are studying our mind, right? There are wrong consciousnesses, and I want to change them into valid cognizer, direct, valid perception of reality, right? And that comes through inferential cognition of reality, which comes from having a correct assumption, which comes from having doubt with respect to what we are experiencing right now. And that comes, that starts with the wrong consciousness. And so then once we have realized emptiness directly, then after that, and also after the inferential cognition, every cognition that comes after that and which is correct is called the subsequent cognizer, which is not as fresh and it's not new like the valid cognizer, like the valid direct perceiver and the inferential cognition, but it is still correct in the sense that it is realizing its object correctly. All right, so these are the 7 consciousnesses that are described. And so then all these consciousnesses are defined, and they might have some more divisions within themselves, so you can do the whole study on on the mind and the different types of consciousness. But the real reason why we want to do it is that at the moment we believe that what we are seeing is true, right? And we want to shake that, and we want to eventually come to a correct understanding, but also a correct perception of reality. And so we have to go in a certain order. Sometimes we hear teachings and you say enlightenment just comes. You meditate and then suddenly it's there. So if you read this, it's like, it's not possible. Where would that come from? It's not possible, right? So then you have teachings, and then the information that you have says something different, then you have to think. So then what are they teaching? What are they talking about? Because it's not necessarily wrong, but if I have these experiences, I cannot explain that with that. I need to come up with another explanation. Then how would it work? Right? So then we have more information. More information about the mind. When we have more information, we can observe more. When we observe more, more questions come. Right? And that whole concept of reality that we have built up in our own mind, we start to shake that a little bit. Right? That's what we want. We want it to eventually drop. All right. So then we can scroll through that. So we have spoken about the valid consciousnesses, and then there are also valid object possessors. Yeah, a little bit up. Up, not too much, not too much. More up. Correct assumption, even more up. No. Sorry, I mean down. Down the text, which means you have to put the text up. Doubt, correct assumption. We want to go to the object possessors. Yeah. So mental direct, no, more up. Yeah, there. No, it is on the bottom of the page. Oh. In general, object possessors are divided into three, right? So we have seen the consciousnesses, and now we look at the object possessor. What is the object possessor? So they are divided into three. There are valid beings. For instance, the Buddha, the teacher, the Buddha. There is valid speech, and there is valid consciousness. So valid speech is, for instance, the Dharma wheel of the Four Truths. And valid consciousness is, for instance, the valid direct perceiver or the valid inferential cognizer. So beside these two, there are so besides these two consciousnesses, there is the valid being and there is the valid speech. So they go through sutra, right? They follow sutra. So I don't know. For me, that gives me the feeling. Oh yeah, of course they have to talk about the teacher and the sutras themselves. So the sutras themselves is valid speech. So when I read the sutras, my speech is valid speech, right, in that moment. So I don't need to be a valid person even to have valid speech. If I use the text, the teachings of the Buddha, and I read that, my speech is valid speech. All right, and then we have how they assert selflessness, and then how they go through the grounds. So we saw with the Vaibhashika, they only talk about selflessness. And when they talk about selflessness, they mean the selflessness of persons. And with that, they mean the absence of a self-sufficient substance. No, is that right? No, I have to go back. 9. Am I saying something that's not correct? Selflessness. Yeah, they have two types of selflessness, and also the South Tantrika has two types of selflessness. First of all the Buddhist schools, they refute the selflessness of persons, which is posited by the Indian schools. So they say that permanent, unitary, independent self that the Hindu or the yogic schools are holding on to, that doesn't exist. That is a selflessness. And then there is a self-sufficient, substantially existent self that appears to us. Also, that does not exist in the way it appears to us. So in Vaibhashika, they were called just a selflessness, or in general. Here in the South Tantrika, they talk about core selflessness of persons and subtle selflessness of persons. So the one that is refuted by the permanent unitary independent self, the one that was posited by the yogic schools, they refute that, and that is the refutation of the coarse selflessness of persons. And then refuting or the emptiness of a self-sufficient, substantially existent self, that is the subtle selflessness of persons. And also they hold on to that whatever exists, it exists objectively. So therefore they do not assert a selflessness of phenomena. And so the way they go progress through the path and grounds is a little bit similar to the Vaibhashikas. So we don't have to go into that. All right. So that is the presentation of the South Tantrika school. A lot about awareness and debate. Right. So although they hold on to that true existence of that things exist in the way they appear, right? That was this external world that exists objectively. They do start to debate in order to challenge how you see that things are related with each other. Right? So there we start to challenge the way the mind works and the way that the mind makes connections. And then maybe it's not like that. Any questions? So we can say, well, this is not the final system, so why would I learn that? Right? It's not going to tell me anything about reality. Why would we study this? Why?
Prepare the mind.
To prepare the mind.
And it's closer to what we are experiencing.
And it's much closer to what we experience or how we interpret what we experience. Yes, it's true. It's true. It's true. And it is quite nice, I think, that also the higher schools, they use same system. And there are a few things that get adjusted because in their system it doesn't completely fit like that. But the basic things are still there. Right? And they might posit them in different way, but they're still there. There is still valid cognition. You might have a little difference in the formulation. For instance, Prasangika says also a subsequent cognizer is a valid cognizer. So to be valid, you don't need to realize something newly. It's not only the first time that you realize it is valid. Also, every next moment that you realize the same thing is also valid. Right? But when we have gone through the South Tantrika, then we think, oh yeah, I get that. Right? And so then you can go backward and forth and you say, oh yeah, they hold on to that, but And then you see that, oh, where I have progressed is actually coming from there. And you see that it is somehow all interwoven and that it has its own function in our development in finding the nature of reality. And so these first two schools, the Hinayana schools, they hold on to that objective existence. And then we go to the mind-only school, and the mind-only says, well, thus such external phenomena do not exist. Right? Some people say that the mind-only says external phenomena do not exist in the way they were posited by the Sautantrika. While other teachers, most teachers say no, they say external phenomena do not exist at all. And so then how that works, they say there is only mind. So how that works is very difficult to understand. I still don't have it, to find that mind that you understand what they're talking about, very difficult. So what they say is like, what are external objects? They say we have all these karmic seeds in the mind. And when the seed ripens, it ripens into the object possessor, the consciousness, and the external, the object. They come from the same seed. And that object is appearing in your mind. Right? There is the appearance of the object. That appearance of the object is not an external object. So if you want to learn about karma, right, and I think that what you said this morning, Lama Zopa, refers to that, everything that our world is coming from our karma. It's like how the world appears to us is our karma. Right? And we can all look at the same thing and we see all something different. And the reason why we see it different is because we have all different karmic seeds that ripen independence upon that thing that we are observing, and it gives a different appearance in the mind. And so when they say there is no external object, you can have the feeling like, whoa, that goes towards nihilism, right? Nothing is there. So then in order to balance that, they posit the mind as being truly existent. So external objects do not exist, but the mind exists truly. Right? That is what exists. That is what is true. That is what is really there. And so then the way that the Shitamatrans are defined is that these are persons who propound Mahayana tenets and who do not assert external objects. And they assert self-cognizers to be truly existent. So these are the consciousnesses that remember that we have experienced something. They are truly existent. So all the minds are truly existent. All right. And so there are two different types. They're called true aspectarians and false aspectarians. And so maybe you have heard about the mind basis of all. And that some schools, they posit 8 consciousnesses and not 6 consciousnesses. So that is one of these two schools. I'm saying that right. I think so. Yeah. So when we hear mind basis of all, we know mind only school. We know Chitta Matrans. When we hear eight consciousness or the Alaya consciousness, we know, oh yeah, Chitta Matra school. And so that is just a different way of positing the afflictions and a different way of positing the self. So then when they're going to talk about the object of refutation, also there you will see differences because of this. And so they are called Chitta Matrans because they assert that phenomena are merely in the nature of the mind. Right, that is why they are called mind only. Okay, mind only is the most difficult to understand intellectually. It's like there's nothing to hold on to, you know, no external objects. What's that? And what is that I'm bumping into? What is that? Does it not exist? Yeah, it does exist, you know, but I cannot explain you. I hear the Geshes say it in Italy, but I cannot grasp the meaning of what he's saying. So I can also not bring that across. So that is still a wish of mine that I can study. Jeffrey Hopkins, he has two or three big books from the mind only translated, and I want to read them, you know, but it is, you need to have some quiet time to do that. So then how do they define the true truth? So the ultimate truth is that which is realized by a valid direct perceiver that directly realizes it by way of the vanishing of dualistic appearances. While the conventional truth is directly realized by way of being together with dualistic appearances. So what are these dualistic appearances? So within the Chitta Matrans, these dualistic appearances, yeah, you have to sing down, go. Yeah. Dualistic appearances is that there is the appearance of objects being external of the mind, being different from the mind. That is the dualistic appearance. And so then you meditate on it and you apply reasoning, and at a certain point you get to the realization where you realize that there is no difference that between the object and the mind, that the object is in the nature of the mind. So the duality of external objects drops away. You realize the object in a non-dual way. Then you come out of that meditation and then everything appears again in duality as externally from the mind. And so when you look into the selflessness, is this correct? Is this you can follow that a little bit?
Isn't it like a dream? Is mind only school?
Yeah, like in a dream.
You have the whole reality in a dream, and in fact it's only the mind. No?
Yes, you can compare like that. You can compare like that. When I was in Chenrezig, there was this monk, young monk, and he said the mind only is really the best to meditate on karma. Because whatever appears to your mind, you take as your karma. You're not doing anything with it except it's my karma. The fact that I see, you know, sometimes you see Sangha members who do things that are not so nice, or you think that Sangha members shouldn't do that, it's your karma that you see that you see them like that. And I even know a story from someone who was in Nepal, near Kopan, and went to a cafe and he saw monks smoking. He was shocked. And he goes to Lama Lhundup and he says, these monks, they are smoking. And Lama Lhundup says, this is just the appearance of your mind. You should purify your mind. Only because of your impurities, you see this, right? So he got a purification practice. And he did a practice, and after that, he didn't see smoking monks anymore. Right? If we say things arise due to our karma, we see the things as we see them. It's not that they're not there. Right? Maybe they are not there. Maybe they are manifestations. We do not know. But the fact that we see it is coming from our karma. So when we purify our karma, the appearances that we have in life will also change, right? Have you had that experience in your life that you feel like there was a period in my life that this kind of things kept happening, and every time when I see somebody like that, I believe they're going to do this, and then they're actually going to do it, and then I purified that aspect. And now these people don't appear anymore. No? Not yet.
I think I had, for example, when I was young, things have been stolen from me.
Yeah.
From me.
Mhm.
And since I have the kind of the vows not to steal,
Uh-huh.
I feel nothing disappears. Kind of very little thing I lose. Always I find things again. This
Yes.
it seems that has changed something.
Yes, could very well be. Could very well be. Robina, she would say, like, when things happen to you, then she says, the reason that it happens to you must mean that you have done that in the past. That's what you need to purify. So if people are, for instance, disrespectful to you, that is a result of you having disrespecting others. So you should purify that when you do your purification practices. And so then you do your purification practices, and then suddenly people start to respect you, and you think, what has changed? But your mind has changed. Something is purified, some karma is purified. Maybe also your perception of what people are doing has been purified. Right? And then it looks like it doesn't happen anymore. So meditating on the mind and the mind only, and saying everything is coming from the mind, is very, very useful to see your karma and to see how we create stories, right? Also, I once did a retreat with the Venerable Antonio. You remember Antonio? He did a lot of Mahamudra, right? Retreats and mindfulness. What was I going to say for that? I can't remember.
Venerable Antonio.
I know that one, but I can't remember what I was going to say.
It's very important how the mindfulness school helps to understand karma.
Oh, yeah. So that was at Ruden Sichun, and you had to sit in the Gompa in lines, right? And then you do your meditation. And I had a story appearing in my mind. And I wanted something with that story. I remember exactly what it was, but it was like I tried to make a wish-fulfilling jewel, that if I thought in the correct way, that actually that would happen, something like that. And I tried that every day. And of course, nothing happens. Nothing happens. But it took me days to realize this is just a story in your mind. Nothing of that is actually happening outside. Nothing. You're just sitting here. You're doing nothing. You walk from the Gompa back to your room, back to the Gompa. You're doing nothing. But these stories appears like you have this whatever fantastic life, in which things come to fruition. Nothing is true, It took me a long time before nothing is true. Nothing of that is true. out there, nothing. Right? So this is what we do. And then when we go through life, whatever comes in the mind, these stories, we mix them with what is actually happening. And we project that on it, and we believe that things are happening in a certain way. But big part is coming from a story from our own side. And once you stop engaging by, for instance, doing retreat, you're left with only the story. And then it becomes very clear how we entertain us. I thought it was an entertaining, entertainment of the mind, creating these stories that I don't know, for my mind at that time, it was very difficult to become really still. It was like I need to entertain myself to be alive, to feel that I'm alive. And when I'm still, I don't have that feedback with myself anymore that I'm alive, right? So we have to find then something else that gives us the feedback that we are alive, so that we can let go of that attachment to these entertaining stories. So this is very useful in the and when we think mind only, it might be related to that. So they posit the ultimate truth is that the dualistic appearances of mind and external phenomena disappears, while the conventional truth is that these dualistic appearances are present. They are realized, the objects are realized together with dualistic appearances. And so then in respect to the selflessnesses, which are ultimate truth, right? When we realize selflessness, we realize the ultimate truth. Then there is a subtle selflessness of persons and a subtle selflessness of phenomena. And so then what is specific for the mind-only school is that they speak about 3 types of phenomena, which are called other-powered phenomena, imputational, imputed phenomena, and thoroughly established phenomena. That is a definition of conventional truth, and then it is just after that. So sometimes we read about other-powered phenomena, right? In general, these are the impermanent phenomena. They are other-powered because the name that we give to them, they are other-powered because they are under the power of other phenomena, right? It's like, for instance, if I have a car, the car is an other-powered phenomena because it is under the influence, or it is dependent upon, all the parts of the car. All the parts of the car are the basis, independence on which we call it a car. Right? So therefore, the car doesn't come from car itself. The car comes from all these parts of the car. So the car is other-powered. Its power of being a car comes from other phenomena than itself. Right? So this is a word that is used within the mind-only school. And then they have imputational natures, which is, I'm not sure how they say that here. They call that in imaginaries, which are non-compounded phenomena, which are not ultimate truth. I'm not 100% sure how to explain that. But what I do know is that there are other powered phenomena, impermanent phenomena, and then something is imputed on top of that. And then the thoroughly established nature of that phenomena is that other powered phenomena without that imputational nature, seeing that. And so that imputational nature is maybe the duality between object and subject. I'm not 100% sure. And so they have a very unique way of presenting reality, which is very, very complex, very difficult to understand. And I feel, and then there are also these two schools which then posit all the consciousnesses in a different way, which makes it very complex. His Holiness talks about these other powered, or these the mind-only school, or the Chittamatra school. When we are interested in when we talk about the realization of emptiness, for instance, and we study Lama Tsongkhapa, then it is all about the object that needs to be realized. What is the object of refutation and what is the object to be realized? All about the object. Well, when we study the mind-only school, it is all about the subject. What is actually that mind that is realizing emptiness? So when we talk about Tantra, when he talks about Tantra, His Holiness keeps bringing back the mind-only school because he wants to see that subjective aspect, right? When we do Tantra, we create all these visualizations in order to establish a result, right? How much of that is true, right? Why is it true? And so then you fall back to the mind-only school. He says they explain a lot about how that works on the subjective aspect of the realization. That is something that I want to go into that later, if I have time. The next life, maybe. That is the big benefit of the Chittamattran view. So other people like the Prasangika, they look at the Chittamatrans and they say, you refute all external objects, you're a nihilist. External objects do exist, right? And then the Chittamatrans, they look at the Prasangika and they say, well, you are refuting inherent existence, you are refuting truly existence, you're a nihilist. Because although external phenomena do not exist truly, the mind does exist truly. So if you refute that, then what is left? You know, you throw out everything, right? So this is how they look at each other. All right, I'm going to make a little break. I'm going a little chatting. People at home, they might be in a shock. Oh my God, what happened? But I thought maybe we have a little bit of space to. Only me. In the sense that I'll stop talking about the text, and we can. If you have questions, you can ask questions. Or if you don't have questions, I'll ask you questions. Anybody online? Is Annette still online or is she already gone?
No, she's online. Gudrun.
Yeah.
I have a question. Do you know these three objects from the Chitramatrins? Can I understand them as how to describe one thing? So, like one table does.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. You can bring that into for one object.
Yes.
Yes. So each object has something that exists truly, which is the other powered nature, and the thoroughly imputed nature, which is the object itself and its emptiness. And then it has the imputational nature, which is seeing it as being an external object. That is not there.
Yes.
You know, so then what I need to realize, I need to realize the emptiness of that, it be an external object. And then I see it for what it is. Yes. Yes, thank you. That is helpful, maybe.
It's a little bit difficult for me to translate.
Yeah,
Yes, definitely. because
extremely difficult.
I do not know this subject. So
Yeah. Yeah.
Nein, das ist nicht so einfach.
Das geht nicht.
So
What is that?
Ich sollte nur, I should just repeat your words.
No, but there are many words that you don't even have a translation for. Maybe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you have to find the right
Viele Wörter.
expression in German.
So Christian is fantastic for that because he knows that all easily. No,
all
he's
the words
he knows all the words
and all the
and he's very
meanings.
easy and
Sie haben es gut, weil eben das studiert hat. Kennt die ganzen Ausdrücke, die ganzen Wörter. Aber wir können das mal, wenn es ist ja aufgenommen, man kann es mal dann zuhören und dann kann es übersetzen.
We can listen again.
yes, this is very intense. No, it's like the mind only is. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, the whole
Maybe.
concept is, I find, I myself have to really listen to understand. So translating.
Yeah, then you have double. I don't know. I have quite a nice chart of the different schools and about their followers, which might give us a little bit of an idea within the bigger context where we see these beings, but should I send it to you, Petra? You put it up?
Oh, yes.
Chart of the 4 schools.
It's
What is that?
It's my email. Prayers.
Teachings given, Bern. It's not there. Where did I put it?
Mach es dann auch auf.
Das.
Müsste nicht alles ganz.
This one, it's on the way. This is actually quite nice and it's a little bit relaxing, you don't have to
Refresh, wo steht auf die School?
Da hier.
Ja, da gibt es Refresh. Die Karte ist eventuell 30 Sekunden.
Aha. Ja. It's coming.
It's coming.
Just a second.
Yes. So we can look at that chart and we see that there are these 4 main Buddhist schools, right? And we went through the Vaibhashika, the Sautantrika. We are trying to go through the Chittamatra, and then the Madhyamika is still waiting for us. And what I like about this chart is that the teachers that are part of that tradition are mentioned here. So when then we think about texts that are written, we can think, that person belongs here and that person belongs here, right? So in the first one, the Vaibhashika school, it says there were 18 sub-schools, and some of the proponents are Vasumitra. I've heard of him, he sometimes pops up in our texts, but the other ones I've never heard of them. That is Dharmapala, Buddhadeva, and Sambhabhadra. So we take that, okay, these are these great beings who held that view. And I don't know, when I think about the Vaibhashikas, I see them wandering around in India, I have that much stronger with them than with the other schools. But then when we look at the Sautantrika school, we see in the followers of scriptures, we see Vasubandhu, and we might have heard of Vasubandhu, right? So Vasubandhu, he wrote, I think, different texts. One of them is the Abhidharma Kosha. And he wrote the Abhidharma Kosha from the perspective of the Vaibhashika. But he would debate himself within that text, coming from South Tantrika point of view. So he is seen to be a South Tantrika, but sometimes people believe he might also have something from the Chittamatrans, because he was very close to a Sangha, who we see on the Chittamatra school. Right? They were like two brothers, or was it like father and son? I think they were like two brothers. Two brothers. I don't know if they were real brothers or whether they were Dharma brothers, but they were very close to each other. And so what people think is that Vasubandhu was so under the influence of a Sangha that although he started as a great exposition proponent, that he then became a Sautantrika and then maybe even went into the mind only, into the Chittamatra. And so that is the Abhidhamma Kosha. And then you have the followers of reasoning, where you see Dharmakirti and Dignaga. And these are the ones who were writing these texts on the debates. Right? So they're followers of reasoning doing the debate. And you can see the centuries, how long ago that was. So the texts that they have written, the Pramanavartika and other texts on debate, are all written from South Tantrika point of view. When we as the Prasangika debate with the South Tantrika, we hit these walls, that we think, I can't get through that. Because things are actually different. So, but these are also fantastic systems, and what they are very good in is that they make things very, very, very clear. What are we actually talking about? They're very good at making that clear. What are we talking about? Right? I don't know about your mind, but my mind is like a bit foggy. Like when I think about things, I put too much in it. Right? Or maybe not enough, but in general, too much. Right? But what is it exactly? When you talk about this, what are you talking about exactly? So they defined all that. And they went through a lot of texts of the Buddha, and they I think in one of their texts, they prove that we can become a Buddha, and they prove that the Buddhist teachings are valid teachings and why they are valid teachings. And so they did a lot of that kind of work. So the Pramanavartika is in the monastery is very important to study that. And then with the Chittamatras, we see Asanga and Vasubandhu towards the end of his life. They are followers of scripture. And in the followers of reasoning, we see Dharmakirti and Dignaga. So I'm not sure where they belong, right? So maybe they have written from both perspectives. Which try to imagine what that means, how intelligent you must be that you can write from both perspectives. And so often it is said that these beings, although we say, well, they were South Tantrikas, and if you look from the Prasangika school, you would have to say it's impossible for these beings to even become liberated from samsara. So what is often said is that these are actually enlightened beings that manifest as a proponent of a certain school, but in actuality, they are already enlightened. And they're just here to help to clarify. And so in the mind only, we see Asanga, and Asanga has written many commentaries on from the mind only point of view. And for instance, when we study the ornament for clear realizations, there Asanga is coming a lot with his suggestions or debates or assertions. And then what is said is that, well, he is putting these assertions forwards from the Chittamatra point of view. But if you really listen to Asanga, he actually had the Prasanga point of view. He had the Prasanga view in his own mind, but he was commenting as a Chittamatra. right? So when you hear Asanga, you think, Chittamatra, but he wasn't really. And so then maybe we are more familiar with the great beings from the Madhyamika tenet schools, the middle way school, where there is the Svatantrika and the Prasangika Madhyamika school. And that Svatantrika school is divided into two. We have the Yogacharya and the Sautantrika Svatantrika. So the Yogacharya Svatantrika, they believe or they hold on to, just like the Chittamatrans, that external phenomena do not exist. So the part of their tenets is in agreement with the mind only, but only part. This little part is in agreement with that. Well, the Sautantrika, Svatantrika, they say no, external objects do exist, and whatever they propose or propound is more in line with the Sautantrika school. And so maybe we have heard of Shantarakshita, Arya Vimuktisena, Kamalashila, Haribhadra. So from Kamalashila, there is this. I think there is this book on meditations, the stages of meditations from Kamalashila, and His Holiness has been teaching on that quite regularly. Vimuktisena and Haribhadra, they come a lot in the Ornament for Clear Realization. Haribhadra actually wrote a commentary on that, and we are also studying the commentary from Haribhadra, and then the commentary that Gyaltsab gave onto that. And within that, we have many quotations from Arya Vimuktisena, who commented on the 20,000 Perfection of Wisdom Sutras. And so he held certain perspectives that lead to a debate, so then they are brought up. And Bhava Viveka, who is in the Svatantrika part of the chart, he is, we find him when we study Madhyamika, when we study on emptiness, Bhava Viveka is there. Right? We don't meet Bhava Viveka when we have the teachings on the hidden meaning of the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras. But when we talk about the explicit meaning of the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, when we speak about emptiness, then we speak about Bhava Viveka. He had a special role to play in that. And so then in the Prasangika school, it talks about Nagarjuna and Aryadeva. And actually, Nagarjuna and Aryadeva, I think they should be more on the top. I think they are shared by Svatantrika and Prasangika. Only after Nagarjuna, with Bhava Viveka and Buddha Palita, there became the split in the Prasangika between the Svatantrikas and the Prasangikas. But before that, there was no split. There was just a middle way. There was just a middle way. So when we study emptiness, when we study the explicit meaning of the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, then what we study it from a Prasangika point of view, but these are commentaries on the perfection of wisdom, on the fundamental wisdom, which is like a commentary of Nagarjuna on the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras. That is what we really study. And so Aryadeva was Nagarjuna's son, in the sense that he was the one who was explaining more in detail what Nagarjuna was saying. We have an unexpected guest. Oh, okay. And so then within the Prasangika, I'll just finish that and then we have a break. You know what it is all about? It's like, what is actually the meaning of Nagarjuna, of what Nagarjuna was saying? And the big discussion is between how things exist ultimately and how they exist conventionally. And so both schools agree that nothing exists truly, right? Both conventionally and ultimately. But things do exist inherently according to the Svatantrika school. Well, the Prasangika says, no, nothing exists inherently, not even on the conventional level. So the first one who brought that, and this is actually the split between these two schools, this part of the thought, this part of the thinking. People thinking that what Nagarjuna was saying, that things do exist conventionally, inherently, but ultimately, ultimately they do not exist inherently. No, wait. So the Svatantrika, they agree, things do not exist inherently, ultimately. They do not exist truly ultimately, but they do exist inherently conventionally. Prasangika says nothing exists inherently, not even conventionally. So Buddha Palita was the first one to say that. The first one to say that. And then there is a story, he was actually kind of a poor guy, not good background. And so people didn't really take him seriously, like, what are you talking about? And then Bhava Viveka came and he defeated Buddha Palita. He said, that's not true. Things do exist conventionally, inherently, right? Things exist inherently on the conventional level. And then Chandakirti came, who was more born in a higher family, prince-like, and so he had more standing. And then he realized that Buddha Palita is right. So he then defeated Bhava Viveka, saying that things do not exist inherently on the conventional level. And so from that text of Chandakirti, then Lama Tsongkhapa gave a big commentary. And from that, the whole Guluk came into being, right? With Gyal Sabje and Kedrop J. They all give commentary to that. And also Jamyang Shepa, who is the text writer for Drepung Monastery, who has written this huge book, Profound, Maps of the Profound. You have that? Maps of the Profound with all the tenet systems. But he has written many texts. And if you actually go online, because Jeffrey Hopkins has a strong connection with Drepung, and so many of his translations are from Jamyang Shepa. They are coming from the Drepung monasteries. Right? These are these textbooks that he translated. We as FPMT, we are more connected to Sarah J. The text writer for Sarah J was Judson Chicky Gelson, who is the text writer of the text that we are studying on tenets. And also the Lorik and many of the things that we are studying is coming from that perspective. But there are subtle differences between what Drepung says and what Sarah says. And so every year, the monks, at least I think 1 month a year, they come together from all the monasteries and they debate. And so if you all agree, it's little to debate, right? So there must be differences so that you can work that out in the debate. Yeah. All right. Is that helpful? Yeah. So we know a little bit in the history where things are and where things belong. And we all have the tendency to do is that we project qualities onto objects and ourselves, which in actuality do not exist. We make things more permanent than they are in actuality. Things look more unchanging than how they change in actuality. So we add something. So adding a quality to things that exist is called being in the extreme of permanence. You make things more permanent than they are in actuality. So that is what we do with everything. And then what we do with reality is that there are things that do exist. We say, no, no, they do not exist. So denying something that exists is called the extreme of nihilism. And so we have that naturally in our mind, that we are doing something too much of this and too much of that, right? And so then we study, and then we realize, oh, I'm holding on to too much. And then we try to let go, and we somehow go too much to the other side. We start negating more than is needed. And then when we realize that, we have to come back. And then we hold on a little bit too much. Not as much as before, but still too much. And we keep going like that until we refine it so much that we end up exactly in the middle. And so that finding the middle way that is free of the two extremes is where whatever we think or observe is in accordance with reality. We have not added anything, nor are we denying anything. So then we are in line with reality. So all these schools say what we are saying about the truth is the middle way, free from these two extremes. Right? So they all know that we need to find that. They all know that we have the tendency to add some qualities to existence which do not exist in actuality. They all know that we deny certain aspects of reality that in actuality do exist. But what we hold on to and how much we hold on to that and how much this is all different. Right? So their middle way looks completely different. And maybe tomorrow, once we have gone through the tenets, we show how they all try to find their middle way and how that differs from each other based on these two truths, right? The two truths. They say these two truths need to complement each other. They need to show the different side of reality. Well, according to the Prasangika school, most tenet schools, the way they present the two truths contradict each other. Right? You can't get that. You can't get that, Petra. Sorry. Because in order to get that, you really need to know what they're positing. And right, it's like, but if you know that, okay, so this is how people look at each other within these tenet systems. So the Prasangika says constantly to the others, you're contradicting yourself. And the way that Prasangika does that is by throwing consequences. If what you are saying would be true, then the consequence is this and this and this and this. Right? And then people are in shock. But that's not what I'm saying. Right? And the consequence school or the Prasangika school believes that when you do that, you wake people up. And when they wake up, they have the correct understanding. So they don't have to go through the whole thinking process of why things are the way they are. If you have a contradiction in your mind, and I'll show you it is a contradiction, in that moment, you realize, yes, it's a contradiction, right? And then you have to drop one part of that. So in the Prasangika school, we say it follows that. From what you're positing, it follows that. Okay. So we are at the last little bits of the mind-only school, of the Chittamatra school. And we still need to talk about the objects of abandonment and the actual presentation of the grounds and path. So within each school, we talk about the basis. What is your, how do you see phenomena? What does exist? What does exist in the relative truth? What exists in the ultimate truth? Then we look at the path, what we need to develop in order to achieve our goal, and then what what are these goals? How do they look like? Right? This is what we're looking at, the basis, the path, and the result. So when we look at the path, we need to look at where is it that you realize reality? Where is it that we have this misunderstanding with respect to reality? What is obscuring us? What are we holding on to that in actuality doesn't exist? And what do we need to realize so that that conception or that idea that we are holding on to, that we can drop it? And so within the Chittamatra school, what we need to realize in order to become liberated from samsara, we need to realize that the self of persons, which is the self-sufficient, substantially existent self, that doesn't exist, that such a self does not exist. From this self, all the afflictive obscurations come into being. So once we realize that that self does not exist, and we realize that in a manner, we see that without the conceptual mind, we see that directly in meditative equipoise, then that realization has the power to start eliminating the obscurations that are kind of attached to that belief in such a self, which are the afflictive obscurations. Right? In the dependence on the self, I grasp at things, I have attachment towards things or towards myself. In dependence on that self, I have aversion. And all the other afflictions are coming from attachment or aversion, or a combination of both. Right? They all come about in dependence upon holding on to a self, a me, in a way that that me in actuality doesn't exist. So when I realize the lack of that self, when I realize, oh, that's not there, then anything that came from that cannot arise anymore. Right? Gone. Gone. It's not gone exactly from the beginning, but slowly, slowly, while we familiarize with that meditation, more and more layers of that wrong idea of self get removed. And with that, all the afflictions that are attached to that or that are associated with that get removed from the mind stream. So that is for the hearers and the solitary realizers. For those who try to develop liberation for their own sake, they need to realize the lack of a self of persons. In order to become a Buddha, that alone is not enough. Something more subtle needs to be realized. And that realization that needs to happen is that we realize that external phenomena do not exist truly. They do not exist truly as external phenomena. In actuality, they are coming from the mind. They are arising from imprints in the mind. And so we need to realize the lack of objects being external phenomena. And that is called the realization of non-duality. And that is within the Chittamatra system, that is the ultimate reality. And so, and that is the self of phenomena, right? The self of phenomena is that it appears as an external object. When I realize the selflessness of phenomena, I realize that although there is that appearance, it doesn't exist like that. External phenomena only exist in the nature of the mind. That is the self of persons that I need to realize. So I need to realize the selflessness of persons, of phenomena. Things do not have that kind of external existence. So in order to become liberated, it is enough to realize the selflessness of persons, because all the afflictive obscurations are attached to that. So they disappear. And that is what actually makes that we are reborn in samsara again and again. These afflictions are all gone. Right? So heroes and solitary realizers, they do not have to do more than that. Which is a lot, but that is what they do. If we want to become a Buddha, then we need to do more than that. We need to realize a more subtle nature of reality, which is we need to realize that external phenomena do not truly exist externally. They exist in the nature of the mind. So they are empty of being truly existent external phenomena. It's not they're empty of true existence, but they're empty of truly existent external phenomena. They don't exist truly as external phenomena. They exist, they come from the mind. So in order to realize that, I need to realize the lack of that, which I need to realize that the non-duality between object and subject, that they both arise from the mind, and they are one nature in that. There's no difference between object and subject in that. Same nature, both coming from the mind. Right? So that somebody needs to realize when they want to become a Buddha. And so then there is a difference how the beings, especially the heroes and the solitary realizers, attain their liberation, how they attain their nirvana. But that is very detailed, and I don't think in what we are doing here that we have to go into that. Right. So the main thing, if we think about the lower schools and then the Chittamatra school in the terms of the tenets, how they view reality, then the lower schools, they say there is an objective external existence, and the mind only says such an existence doesn't exist. There is nothing externally objective. There is nothing externally. Everything that exists and appears to exist externally comes from the mind, comes from the ripening of imprints from the mind. So this is like if we're looking for the middle, you could say, okay, so the Chittamatrans are a reaction to the Sautantrika, and then they maybe go a little bit too far, right? So now we have to come back to the middle. And so then we have the Madhyamika schools, where we have two different schools. We have the Svatantrika and we have the Prasangika. And so we can look at their definition. And the definition of a proponent, it says of non-entityness, which is the emptiness of true existence. So they all propound the emptiness of true existence. So someone who does that is a person who propounds Mahayana tenets and does not assert real, true existence, even nominally. So even on the relative level, even on the level of the conventional truth, there is no true existence. Right? So nothing exists truly. And both middle way schools agree on that. What they mean with true existence is very different. But they use the same word. Right? So that is where the confusion for us comes. So both agree on the same thing, that things do not exist truly, conventionally, and ultimately. But if we talk about true existence, we also sometimes talk about things are not established by way of their own character, or things do not exist by way of their own entity, or things do not exist inherently. For Prasangika, these four terms, together with the lack of true existence, are all the same meaning. All the same meaning. Not exactly the same meaning, but they refer in a certain perspective to the same thing. Right? If we, for instance, say in Prasangika, things do not exist truly, that means that things do not exist in the way they appear. If I say things do not exist established by way of their own character, what I mean is that although things look like they have been established by their way of their own character, for instance, fire seems to be hot because there is something in the fire that makes it hot. So this is a characteristic of the fire that lives within the fire. This is an innate feature of the fire that exists inherently in the fire, right? So the Svatantrika school that it is like that feature exists within the fire. Prasangika says, no, things are not established by way of their own characteristics. It's not that we call fire fire because it's hot. It's not that that hotness is an ultimate feature of that fire. It's just a conventional existence. So that's a very subtle point, which is difficult to grasp. But what I want to show is that existing by way of their own characteristics, right? For the Prasangika, that shows that if something does not exist by way of their own character, that doesn't exist truly, even conventionally. The Svatantrika says things are established by way of their own character, because the fact that the fire is hot makes that we call it the fire. There is something there from the side of the fire that makes it so hot, and that makes it that we call it the fire. So there is something from the side of the object. So Prasangika says nothing exists from the side of the object. Svatantrika says, no, there is something from the side of the object. So they hold on to some objective existence, and you do need the mind in order to perceive that. But there is something from the side of the object that makes that we call the object whatever we call it. Some characteristics are there that make it that. Right? The hotness is what makes the fire. The wetness is what makes it the water. There are characteristics there in the object that make the object what it is. So that is a huge difference. Both say that thing lacks true existence, but what I mean is very different. Truly existence means for the Svatantrika that over there, there is nothing there that is not established by the consciousness. Everything that is there is established by the consciousness. Everything that is there is coming about independence upon being perceived by the consciousness. Without the consciousness, things cannot exist. Nothing can exist independent of the consciousness. That is what the Svatantrika says. Prasangika agrees, but Prasangika goes a little bit further and says that what you think exists there, which depends upon the consciousness by being perceived by the consciousness, that is actually coming from your consciousness. It's not coming from there. This is your difficult point.
Have you said Svatantrika or you mean Chitamata?
No, I'm talking about Svatantrika and
Svatantrika,
Prasangika.
correct, yeah. Oh, Svatantrika, Prasangika, okay, no.
Yeah?
I was confused now. Sorry.
Good. One of our teachers would say, confusion comes. Very good. Then wisdom also comes, you know, because for the wisdom to get activated, right? The wisdom is that mind that keeps thinking, what was she saying? What was that about? True existence. Huh? This is your wisdom mind, trying to understand, trying to sort it out, right? So that wisdom mind only comes when we are confused, right? When we are clear, there's nothing to sort out. So if we want to develop the mind, we have to go through the confusion. right? This is what we train in the first year for the master's program. Because people, we like to be clear, no? That feels much better than that we are confused. When we are confused, we don't feel so well. We don't like ourselves when we are confused. So then we are sitting in class and there is just confusion. And then sometimes they get a glimpse and then they are confused again. You know, they're like, I'm confused again. And I would say, congratulations, wisdom is coming. So it took about a year to get used to that. And now it's like, yeah, it's not a problem, you know, it's like an opportunity there. And it's not that we need to go in there with our wisdom and do it. It will happen naturally, right? If there's confusion, something in us starts to try to figure it out. We don't have to think, oh yeah, I had that confusion yesterday. Let me go back there and think about it. We don't have to do that. The mind is doing that automatically, right? So that is the wisdom mind that is doing that. So by studying this, the mind becomes confused many times. What are you talking about? I thought I got it and now it's gone. I had it for a minute and then you have to do it again and you have to do it again. And every time more confusion comes, you know, but slowly, slowly, some clarity starts coming and the mind becomes more stable in the knowledge that you have, right? So then you have cleared these obstacles. And you have developed the wisdom mind that knows it so well that even if I tell you the opposite, you're not getting distracted anymore, you don't get confused anymore. No, I know it. What you're saying is not correct, right? You're going to get to a point like that. And we want to go there. The only way to get there is through the confusion. And I think that the confusion has many levels. So first we sort it out superficially. And then we kind of have a little bit of holding on to some knowledge. But the moment we go a little bit deeper, we lose it again, you know? And the moment we get emotionally involved in something, we completely lose it because there is no wisdom mind there, right? And so we have to pick ourselves up again and again and go through it, the material again and again, so that we stabilize that knowledge, not just on the highly intellectual level, but that we bring it to levels in our mind that even if we are distracted, even if we are under stress, even if we are pushed in certain directions, we know, right? That's knowledge. When Serkan Rinpoche is here, you can push him in any direction, right? He's not going to move away from his knowledge. Right? He doesn't say, oh, now I forgot what I do that. But there he doesn't do that. He will remember under every circumstance. That is how strong his wisdom has developed. Right? That's where we wanna bring that knowledge to the deeper levels of our mind. All right. So with that, we move into the Svatantrika. Are you ready for that? Or you feel like we're sick of it? You're still okay? You feel it coming, no? It's a bit pushing. The brain starts to freeze a little bit. But we can do a little bit more. No? Then tomorrow you will feel like, oh, wow. So the definition of a Svatantrika is a Madhyamika who, by means of accepting autonomous reasons, does not accept true existence even nominally. So a Svatantrika is mutually inclusive with the Madhyamika who propounds inherent existence. And that inherent existence is on the conventional level. Right? So there are two types of Madhyamikas. Some they refute inherent existence conventionally, and some hold on to inherent existence conventionally. The ones that hold on to it are the Svatantrikas. The ones who refute that are the Prasangikas. This is a major difference, you know. And when we, for instance, when we study Madhyamika, we look a lot into debates between the Svatantrika and the Prasangikas. And they, with the Madhyamika, we studied 8 difficult points between Prasangika and the Svatantrika. There are 8 points in which they fundamentally differ in how they posit their tenets. And this one is the main one. This inherent existence, asserting that or not asserting that with respect to the conventional reality. All right, so we're now in the system that holds on to that. Things do exist inherently on the conventional level. And so there are 2 divisions. One is the Sautantrika, Svatantrika. So these are more connected to the Sautantrika school. And then there is the Yogacara Svatantrika, which share certain tenets with the Chittamatra school. And so then you can see that in the definition, coming back, that is Svatantrika Madhyamika is a Madhyamika who propounds a presentation of nominal existence, mostly in accordance with Sautantrika tenets. And the Yogacara Svatantrika Madhyamika, mostly in accordance with Chittamatra tenets. And so you see, this is all about nominal existence. This is about conventional existence. Because these Madhyamikas, they agree on how they posit ultimate existence. They agree that nothing exists truly ultimately. They agree that nothing exists truly conventionally also. But then there is this difference in, do things exist inherently, conventionally or not? And so then we have some examples of great beings who represent each of these systems. And we mentioned them before the break. Bhava Viveka, we didn't say Janagarbha, but he's also one of the Sautantrika, Svatantrika tenet holders. And then for the Yogacara Svatantrikas, there is the Shantarakshita, Haribhadra, and Kamalashila. And so the reason why Bhava Viveka is said to be a Svatantrika Madhyamika is that he asserts reasons that exist from their own side. So what we want to do is we want to get to the nature of reality. In order to get to the nature of reality, we need to realize something that does not appear to direct perception at the moment. The nature of reality is what is called a hidden object. We can't perceive it directly with our senses. It's hidden for our senses. So then in order to make it manifest, what we need to do, we need to apply the reasoning, right? Hidden objects, we can realize them by way of reasoning. Have you heard of that? Yeah. And so the way that these reasonings are posited in these 2 systems is very different, and how they are used is very different. So Bhava Viveka and the Svatantrika, Sautantrikas, they are holding on to that things exist inherently from their autonomously, from their own side, you know. So then when you use reasonings, you need to have reasonings that have a power in and of themselves. And they say that in order to understand the reasoning, I need to understand all the aspects of all the parts of that reasoning. I need to realize all the parts of the reasoning in order to understand the reasoning. Prasangika says, no, you don't have to. Because if you have a contradiction in your mind, and so your reasoning, there is a fault in your reasoning, I just show you the consequence of that. And when you get that consequence, you cannot hold on to the reasoning. So you don't have to go through the whole reasoning. You just need to see that yours is wrong and drop it. And then from there, the correct understanding will arise in the mind. Right? It's kind of it's a very different way of debating. Yeah, is that okay? Yeah. And then we go to how they posit objects and objects possessors. And we already mentioned that a little bit. And so the big difference between these two is that within the Prasangika, when we speak about true existence, we also speak about being established by way of their own character, being established from its own side, and being established inherently. They're all the same meaning. In the Svatantrika, true existence and the other three have a completely different meaning. So being established by way of the own character, established from its own side, and inherent existence exists. Things exist like that, but they don't exist truly. And so these three terms they cover the same meaning, which means there is something from the side of the object, which is acknowledged by the mind, but it's not coming from the mind, that is existing in the object, that makes that the object is that. Right? So there are characteristics from the side of the object that exist. There is something established from the side of the object. There is something inherently in the object that makes that object that. And so then we speak about non-affirming negations. I'm just gonna leave that. What we want to know is that what is actually the ultimate truth? Ultimate truth, reality, and subtle selflessness of phenomena are mutually inclusive. So if you hear that subtle selflessness of phenomena, then you have to think, what about the subtle selflessness of persons? Right? Where has that gone? Is that not here in that system? No, also there is a subtle selflessness of persons, but that's not an ultimate truth. So when the hearer and the solitary realizer realize selflessness of persons, they might, in dependence upon that, they realize their goal, they attain nirvana, but they have not realized the ultimate truth. They have not realized the ultimate nature of reality. In order to realize the ultimate nature of reality, we need to realize the subtle selflessness of phenomena, which is the lack of true existence. Right? And then in dependence upon realizing the lack of true existence, we can develop our full potential of wisdom and compassion, and we can actually become a Buddha. So that realization of the selflessness of persons has the capacity to remove the afflictive obscurations, which means all the obscurations that are connected to the self, to me, to the self of persons. Right? But besides these afflictive obscurations, what we are saying in the Svatantrika is there are also cognitive obscurations, or obscurations to knowledge obscurations. Although I can remove that grasping at the self and all the afflictive obscurations that are associated with that, I still haven't realized the profound nature of reality. In order to realize that, I need to realize the lack of true existence. That lack of true existence, I don't need to realize that to become free from samsara. But I do need to realize that in order to have the capacity that I can help each and every sentient being to become free of samsara. Okay. Any questions? Or do you need some time to let this sink in?
So I have a question.
Yes.
From this point of view,
Yes.
what is the coarse and subtle selflessness of person? Is it the same as before?
It's the same as before. Yes.
Yes. And then the subtle selflessness of phenomena is no true existence.
Things do not exist truly. Yes.
Yes. And is there also a course?
And there's also a course, which is
And what is it?
you can think about it.
Yes.
So that must be something that we did before. When we spoke about the Chitta matrons.
Is it not existent, independent of the mind?
So that there are no external objects independent of the mind, right? They do not, external objects, they're not different from the mind. They do not exist as external objects. They are in the nature of the mind. So the non-duality between mind and external objects, that is the core selflessness of phenomena in the Svatantrika system. Yeah, but I wonder if that is only in the Svatantrika connected to the Yogacara Svatantrika, or is that also in the Sautantra, in the Sautantrika Svatantrika?
Yes,
I think it's only in the Yogacara.
yes.
Yeah. And I think that the other group, so the Yogacara is like Haribhadra and Vimuktisena. They say that the core selflessness of phenomena is that the duality between mind and external objects. But that's the core self of phenomena. The selflessness is realizing the absence of that. The Sautantrika, Svatantrika, such as Bhava Viveka, who fall back onto the Sautantrika assertions of objects, of phenomena. What they say is there is only the core selflessness of persons and the subtle selflessness of persons, and then there is the selflessness of phenomena. But I don't think they differentiate between coarse and subtle.
Thank you.
Yes. This is just for her because she's studying that online. We go like, oh. Okay. I'm going to stop with this information because I can see that your brains are not working anymore. And so I'm not going to push because then you don't come back tomorrow. And I'd like you to come back tomorrow. But maybe we can reflect on something else, right? Let me have a look if I have something that we can look at. Something that is not too difficult. No, if I'm going to put up any chart, it's not going to go well. I don't think so. It's too much. What would be helpful to hear? Felix.
What is the question?
You translate a question, but you forget the question.
I just translated the last.
Yeah, that was the
What would be
question.
helpful to hear?
What would be helpful to hear?
In
We have still like 25
In
minutes.
which context? Aha.
And I feel like we're gonna leave this till tomorrow
Okay.
when the brain is fresh and when we can, start again with an analysis, because otherwise it's not gonna come in and we're just gonna get a headache and it's not gonna be nice. What will be helpful to hear?
So, okay. Also Larissa would like to ask if she have already heard the Prasangika and Madhyamika, why is it necessary to understand the lower schools?
So when we have gone through that yesterday and today, what was the main thing that you learned from that, or most useful? I'll just ask a question back.
Ja, jetzt.
She understood about the subtle mind and the more gross mind.
And so where is our mind at the moment? Is it more coarse or is it more subtle, our mind? It's more coarse, huh?
Coarse, yes.
Yes. And so emptiness, the emptiness that we eventually want to realize, is that a subtle object or is that a coarse object? Very subtle, right? So very subtle.
Yeah.
So we need to prepare the mind to learn to discriminate more subtle objects. We need to be able to recognize more subtle objects. So in order to do that, we need to develop the mind, right? We need to train the mind so that the mind gets that capacity to be able to see the most subtle object, which is emptiness. So when I start training the mind that is very coarse, I need to somehow train on that level and then start making it more subtle. And so when we study the tenets, this is just me saying that, it starts with more coarse ways of looking at reality, right? You remember when we spoke about the Vaibhashika school, what they see as the ultimate truth is that or the conventional truth, when you smash something with a hammer, and the moment it is smashed, the image that I have of that in my mind disappears. It's a conventional truth. We can say, oh yeah, I understand it, right? It's understandable because it's more coarse. Then from there, I go to more subtle presentations of the true truth. And so then even when we go to the Sautantrika and especially the mind only, we are like, what are they talking about? Right? We don't completely get it because the mind is not refined enough. There are too many obscurations in the mind. So what we say is that all these tenet schools, they somehow represent a certain level of our own mind, a certain level of our own thinking. And so by thinking about their position and by thinking about why it is not like that, we are actually training our own mind that certain ways we are thinking is actually not in accordance with reality. Right? We have to say, oh, it cannot just be like that. Or we can say, oh, this presentation is much more subtle. I do have these tendencies in the mind, but I can see this is much more subtle. And so then I prepare kind of the way to I prepare an entrance into a subtle, preparing the mind for thinking in a more subtle way, preparing the mind to see a more subtle object. I prepare the mind by using these 4 schools, because these 4 schools are not separate from my mind. They represent something in my mind. Right. So when we studied at Chenrezig, the nuns would say to the Geshe, just give us the final view. We don't need to know all the other things. Just tell us the truth. Right. And so that is how we saw that. Or we have this one truth from the Prasangika, and all the rest is not really true. So why would we go there? Right. So that is what we think in the beginning. Why would I do that? But we will not be able to grasp the profundity of the Prasangika if we do not prepare the mind, right? We cannot understand that from the beginning. Unless maybe if we have done this many lifetimes before, we might get it in one go, but most people do not. You know, they're listening to the teachings and they think, what are we talking about? Right, Felix?
Yes.
Right, and then we have small misunderstandings that we believe to be true, and we hold on to that for a long time, right?
What do you mean?
We'll get to that one tomorrow. To really find the middle, you know, to not hold on to anything that in actuality doesn't exist, and to not make up something that is not there, or to refute something that is there. It's very, very, very difficult, because that is the most subtle place where the mind can go. There is the middle, you know. So before we are there, we keep going like this, doing too much, either way. So it takes time. I still find my mind, you know, that when you think you understand something, somehow you throw out too much. Oh, that was not correct, but you throw out too much. And then later you realize, oh, but there was something still good. So I have to take that back, right? Because the mind is not so refined. You know, to our mind, it's, I think we hold on to whole clusters that are all the same thing for us, but we can divide these clusters into many, many, many things, and it has many layers of subtlety. For us, they're all same thing. Or something needs to go out, the whole thing goes out, right? And so I think by studying this, we learn that, oh, it wasn't the whole thing. Oh, I can open this up. There are many different things in here. Okay, this I need to keep, and this I throw away. Oh, I still throw away too much. I have to take something back. Now I'm holding on too much. We keep doing that until we find that real middle way. Right? So thinking about this and learning about the debates, and it helps us to go through that development. And it's not easy, you know. It's like you have the text and the debates are written in it. What one person says, what the other person says. At a certain point, I said to the group, let's do a kind of a role play, right? You are here the defenders, and you are the opponent, right? And you just play it out, and you are allowed to write it all down, and then you have to play together. Even that is extremely difficult, right? So everything is there, but the mind is not refined enough to really get it, you know, so then it's difficult to do, but useful, because by doing that, you learn something. So that emptiness that we're trying to realize, that we want to realize in order to become fully enlightened, that emptiness is covered up with a lot of beliefs, convictions, wrong reasons, covered up. We can't see it. We need to uncover. Sometimes we say we have to unpeel the onion, right? We have to peel the onion, we have to peel it back. And we feel like, well, I go through all these layers, but in terms of reality, we have to do the same thing. We need to peel these layers off that we put on top of it, that are not there, that are not there. They have nothing to do with reality, what we believe, nothing. So we need to understand that is not reality. I see it like that, but it's not how things actually are. How do I know? Because when I use my logic, I know it cannot be like that. Even having the logic doesn't mean you can see it. It doesn't mean that naturally you can uncover that, you know. You might have to work really hard on that, but it's the first step. Oh, I'm believing in something that is actually not there, right? That's already fantastic. But we want to see that reality. Does that make sense?
Ja, ich habe nicht alles verstanden, aber ich habe
Also, or what you have understood, it makes sense, but maybe not. Uh-huh.
That's also my translation.
Uh-huh. So what's your question, Felix? What would be helpful to hear with what we have done so far? Yes.
Is it not at the end an endless process and we will never get to the end?
What would be the end?
Even this,
That middle.
yeah, that they will always be subtler. It will be endless.
Then you would say that we will never be able to realize the truth.
Well, always to a subtler,
Uh-huh.
but never, like the universe, there is no end to the universe.
So what do you, if you hear about the condition or the mind state of a Buddha?
Yeah, that's my question. Maybe this is also an illusion that it goes subtler till the like eternity of the universe. We don't know what's the end of the universe. So I can also imagine that in the other direction it goes forever.
I mean, from a certain point of view, you know, if you say, for instance, can I find that, right? Yeah, that is a specific point. So what we say in Buddhism is that the end is when everything that obscures your mind is removed. Do you believe that is possible?
But that's the question then.
But you're saying I can go deeper. So, but now I say, well, we need to remove something. Do you believe you can remove everything? Maybe then you end up somewhere and you can still go deeper. But do you believe you can remove everything that is obscuring the nature of reality? So I think there is a difference in the right one. You look at where you are going deeper, and the other one is like, what do I need to remove in order to go deeper? So do you think you can generate a mind that has the capacity to remove whatever is obstructing you or obstructing your mind?
It's a very difficult question
Yeah.
for me because it's the same question. For me, it has the same quality. Can I ever reach the end of the universe?
We don't even have to get enlightened for that, you know. We just take rebirth there, right? So in Buddhism, say we all have that potential to achieve Buddhahood, right? To actualize whatever can be actualized. So what does that mean? We have the potential to be able to do that. That means that when we look into the mind, there is nothing in that mind that exists inherently as being in the nature of the mind. So that nature of the mind is completely empty of anything existing there inherently. It is like space. Nothing is in that space that is there from the beginning and will always be there. It's like completely clean. Because it is clean, we have the potential when we create the proper causes and conditions to develop any quality that can be developed and to remove any obscuration from that space that can be removed. Because in the nature of the mind, there is nothing that is a pollution or an obscuration that is in the nature of the mind. They are there adventitious. They are there due to causes and conditions. So when I generate the opposite causes and conditions, they will be removed. And because that nature of the mind is pure from the beginning, pure in the sense there is nothing inherently existing in it. Because of that, when we generate the proper causes and conditions, we can develop any qualities independent upon that purity. That purity, the nature of the mind is pure, so whatever qualities I have has come about independence upon causes and conditions. It's not coming about independence upon, also independence upon the nature of the mind, but the nature of the mind allows to arise whatever I create the conditions for. There is nothing in the mind itself. You know, the mind itself is like a mirror. There is nothing in the mirror except what I put in front of it. The mind is the same. There is nothing in the mind from the side of the mind. Completely like space. So then what comes in the mind comes from us. How do we create that? We create that by creating the causes and conditions for that, with our actions, with the way that we think. So when I change that, I can change whatever appears in that mirror of the mind. And so then I can also make it that it becomes completely clean. I can see, and I can see that emptiness that of the mirror, that from the side of the mirror, there's nothing. I can see that. Right? When I can see that there is nothing from the side of the mirror, I am realizing the nature of that mirror. That's not an endless realization, right? There is an end to that. I can see that. Then I can make it so familiar in my mind that it becomes my second nature to realize every time when I look in the mirror that actually that mirror has no characteristics of its own. And what I see in it is what I put in it. And I can change what I put in it. There is my power. I can do something there. Right? And so what we want to develop is that mind that becomes fully aware in every moment that that mirror is empty. There is nothing in the mirror from the side of the mirror. The mind is completely pure from the beginning. That is what we want to realize in every moment. That's the highest that we can realize. Right? And so that comes with familiarity. Getting used to it, getting used to it. So, and then before we can get used to it, we have to first develop that, that we can see that mirror, that there is nothing from the side of the mirror. That we need to see that. Once that is realized, then we can familiarize with that. And then they say that when you can see in every moment that the mirror has no characteristics of its own, that the mind has no characteristics of its own, if we can see that in every moment, then with that comes the capacity to realize all phenomena of the universe in one moment. So when we speak about the qualities of the Buddha, there are these inconceivable qualities that we have no idea. how that works. Because it's so huge, you know. And so we have to kind of, on the basis of the reasonings that come with the realization of emptiness, we somehow have to accept, right? Really, you know, every time that we realize that emptiness, and that emptiness becomes stronger and removes more of our pollution of the mind, the more qualities are there, and they grow exponentially, right? The more capacity we have to somehow accept. You know, it's like, I don't know if it's true, but it sounds quite amazing. And then we look at teachers like Lama Zopa Rinpoche or like Kandrula, and we can maybe see some kind of these qualities shining through, right? I don't know, from Kandrula there are these stories that she walks through walls, right? She just appears in places that you think, how does that work? Right? So she has qualities that we have we cannot conceive that with our mind. But we see that we see someone who has these qualities, or we have heard that she has these qualities, right? So then you try to connect with that. What is that? What is that? Right? But with our state of mind, we cannot see that, because you can only see that once you have developed that capacity. Yes. Does that help?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Our ordinary mind is quite limited, you know, and they say that we cannot see the realizations of those who have higher realizations than we have. We can only see the realizations of those who have lower realizations than we have, or equal realizations. So what these lamas are doing, I mean, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, what he was doing is so incredible, so beyond what you can imagine. I actually only could see that after he passed away. I thought like, oh my God, what was he all doing? It's so vast. His activity was so vast. So many incredibly big ideas, where we as normal human beings, we would not go to one project and say, I'm going to do that. Maybe Felix would do that, right? You would do that. You would just say, I'm going to do it. But most of the project, you look at it and you think, I could not even do one little bit of that. But there is this mind that has these massive ideas and then starts somewhere to actualize it. And it is happening. It's happening. Right? Now, all over the world, students are they're manifesting all these ideas that Rinpoche had. Right? Coming from his mind. I don't know, for me, it's like, I think I never dared to think like that when he was still alive. Having him as a teacher and being close, it's very scary to realize these qualities. But then, yeah, that was like, oh my God. So also after he passed away, we heard stories from Venerable Lhundup, who had been with Rinpoche in very early times. And the way that he was talking, what Rinpoche was doing, was like, I had no idea. Right? So even when he was very young and very thin, he was not eating, not drinking, only meditating, not sleeping. Right? And so Lhundup had to take care of him, Venerable Lhundup. And so at a certain point, so when you have to take care of Lama Zopa Rinpoche, your sleep is very short. And so then Lama Zopa said Venerable Lhundup had to bring a cup of tea, I think at 5 o'clock in the morning. So he would work till maybe 11 o'clock, then go to bed, and then had to be in the room with the tea, 5 o'clock, exactly 5 o'clock. Don't come 1 minute later, because you get scolded or whatever. So 5 o'clock. So Lhundup was there, right? Slept very short. He was there. And he said every time he came in the room, Lama Zopa was meditating, not sleeping, meditating. And he put the tea there, And then at 9 o'clock for breakfast, the tea was still there. He never touched the tea. And then at a certain point, Lama Zopa said, can you also bring me a tea at 2 o'clock? So then he had also to get up at 1:30 to make the tea for 2 o'clock. And he said he never touched the tea. But I had to make the tea every night, which means that Lama Zopa was meditating day and night, not eating, not drinking. Right? It's like I didn't know that. I knew he was not sleeping. I know he was only like sleeping 1 hour a day or something, but not eating, not drinking. And I never heard that. I was like, oh my God, if you have that capacity, that's amazing. Right? And then at the same time, you are working for sentient beings. And then at the same time, you do so much activity, right? It's like if I don't eat before I teach, my mind is, I need to eat something so that my mind is a bit more stable, right? But then not eating at all. And at the same time, benefiting so many sentient beings. It's incredible. Yeah. And if you look into all his projects, they're all incredible. They're so big, you know. I don't know how many thousand Guru Rinpoches are going to appear on this earth, and how many stupas and how many holy objects everywhere are going to appear that he inspires people to create. Right? It's like, and for how many beings he takes care in order to preserve the lineage. How many geshes are receiving money from him every month? How many geshes receiving every year new robes? How many other projects he sponsors in order to support the teachers being teachers. How he supported Sarah J, right? You heard about that food fund. And how they, for years, they were generating money for that food fund. And that started with when Lama Ösel went to the monastery. And when a little Lama comes to the monastery, there is a tradition that the Lama or the family of the Lama needs to offer lunch to all the monks in the monastery, which is very expensive. Right? It's like if there are 5,000 monks, you have to think about at least 5,000 euros, but maybe more, right? So now it might be double. So it's very, very expensive to have your son enter into the monastery. So when Lama Ösel entered into the monastery, that money needed to be collected and it was offered. And then Lama Zopa say, how strange is that? They only offer lunch on this day because monks need to eat every day. You know what? I'm going to offer lunch every day to the monks, right? So then he tells FPMT, this is what we're going to do. Oh my God, you know, we need to do fundraising in order to collect that money. So they started doing that. And then Lama Zopa said, but also need dinner, right? So then he also started to offer dinner to all the monks. And I think, I'm not sure about the breakfast, but I think he offers that as well. So then he offers all the meals, and then he's made this promise. I will promise that I will offer 3 meals a day to all the monks in Sarah J until there is no more monk left. Right? If you have a mind that is so brave that you make a commitment like that, it's like incredible, no? And so he started doing that, and then he thought, you know, now we have to do this constant fundraising. If we would have a big amount of money and we would invest that, then we can maybe pay for the food by the return of the investment. So he thought, they counted how many millions he needed to have for that. And so then one day he was in Taiwan and he was going to visit this nunnery, and there was the abbess of the nunnery. She, the night before Rinpoche arrived, she dreamed that tomorrow morning a bodhisattva will arrive at your door, and you have to give him whatever he asks for. So the next day, Lama Zopa knocked on the door. And the abbess said, "This is my dream. I want to give you whatever you ask for." And then Lama Zopa said, "Give me $1 million." And the abbess gave him $1 million. And so he used that to invest for the food fund. And then at a certain point, they had enough money so that the food fund could provide all the monks 3 meals a day. And then what he did is he gave the whole fund to Sarah Monastery. Right? So his promise kept. For as long as there are monks there, they will have 3 meals a day. They never have to worry about that. To do that, you need to have such a huge mind, no? Incredible, incredible, incredible. So that's only one project. So there's many of these projects, and it's like genius how he brings it all together. You think, how is that possible? But somehow it manifests like that. And I think, that is the mind of the enlightened being. We have no idea how that works. Where are these ideas coming from? But it works. And it comes together. So tomorrow we're going to talk about the autonomous school or the Svatantrika school. What do you like more, when we use the Western terms or we use the Sanskrit terms, Prasangika, or is that Tibetan term maybe? You like when we talk about Prasangika and Svatantrika, or you like autonomous school and consequent school? The Svatantrika and Prasangika. I'm not even sure if it's Sanskrit or if it's Sanskrit. Oh, okay. So Sarah, we do some dedications. Is anyone wants to lead the dedications? Because you want to put them up there or not? I see Hans-Peter is putting them up. Yeah, no, thank you. I'm just expressing what you're doing. So can somebody lead the prayers? I will join, but I can't read them. Felix, Umze, Umze. The chant leader. Whichever you like, whichever you used to do here. Okay?
We have generated. Let's dedicate for those causes.
Zentrum Rinpoche Makye Panam Ye Gyuchi Ye Wanyam Me Payam Gone Kondu Pelwa Shu Dawa Rinpoche Makye Panam Ye Gyuchi Ye Wanyam Me Payam Gone Kondu Pelwa Shu
Nicht nach oben.
Zurück? Nein, nicht du. Genau.
Andere Richtung.
Gehst du wieder rauf?
No, no, other way.
Seite
Other way.
36.
Yeah.
Seite 36.
Dann gehst du zum...
One more, up.
Also in der Heiligkeit alle Lama.
Up.
Genau.
Ja,
Genau,
stopp.
hier.
Kiwa we kowe shikam diya panda dewa malu jovele chen wen sing wan ten sing yasui shapen si te badu ten yu chi.
Can also dedicate these merits that the Lama Zopa Rinpoche manifests again in a perfect form to the most benefit for all sentient beings. And that, as Chato Rinpoche mentioned, and His Eminence Linga Rinpoche, that he has a very clear, sharp mind, that he can answer all questions, and that he has very strong good genes, so that he has a very strong health and a long life, and that he will become a very great teacher of Sutta and Tantra, a very great lineage holder, and that we have in all our lives connection, this very strong connection, pure devotion to him.